One scorching afternoon, filled with the whims of wealthy patrons, changed her life forever. She was a waitress on the verge of burnout, drained by night shifts and endless studying, until he appeared, confident, mature, attentive. Soon, luxury getaways, a fairy tale wedding, and a dream home became her new reality. But in a world that glitters, the deepest cracks hide beneath the shine, a loneliness no amount of wine or flowers could soothe. One chance encounter, and her heart started racing again. One kiss, and everything spiraled out of control. Scandal, betrayal, infidelity, a viral video, and the complete loss of everything. What do you do when all that's left of your former life is pain and a suitcase in your hand? That's when the real transformation begins. Not pretty, not glamorous, but raw and purifying. And from that moment on, everything is real. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends or family. It really helps my channel a lot. Please tell me in which city or country you watched this video. I value every one of your comments. So, let's get started. I never would have guessed that something as ordinary as a piece of sports gear could completely change the course of my life. But that's precisely what happened. At 28, I was burning the candle at both ends, working late shifts at an exclusive country club while squeezing in classes for my psychology degree. The job was anything but glamorous, but it helped me keep my head above water. Thinking back, I had no clue that a single afternoon would flip my entire reality upside down. The heat that day was so intense, it seemed to make the air ripple, and the club buzzed with well-to-do members dressed in spotless polos and immaculate visors. I weaved between tables, balancing trays and forcing my brightest customer service grin. Then, one guest decided to make my already tough day worse. He nitpicked everything. His drink wasn't cold enough, the service too slow, nothing could satisfy him. My patience was about to snap when a calm, authoritative voice cut through the tension. "Is there an issue here?" I turned to see Matthew, tall, sun-bronzed, with distinguished streaks of gray at his temples. He was 37, and every year suited him. In just a few words, Matthew shut down the difficult guest with an effortless confidence that immediately eased my nerves. When my shift wrapped up, Matthew was waiting for me at the bar. We got to talking, and before I knew it, hours had melted away. He was sharp, charming, and somehow made me feel like I was the center of the universe. I couldn't help but get swept up in it. From that point on, we were nearly inseparable. Matthew introduced me to a world I'd only ever glimpsed in films, elegant dinners, spontaneous weekend getaways, and yes, he tried teaching me golf, even though my swing remained hopeless. For the first time in my life, I felt valued and truly seen. In just 8 months, we went from strangers to husband and wife. It sounds reckless in retrospect, but back then, it felt like fate. Our wedding was the stuff of fairy tales. I wore a dress I'd never dared to picture myself in. Matthew looked dashing in his tuxedo, and our loved ones gathered as we pledged forever. As we swayed together during our first dance, Matthew leaned in and murmured, "You've made me the happiest man alive, Vanessa." I believed him with all my heart. If only I'd known my fairy tale ending would soon become a cautionary tale. That's how life works, isn't it? The biggest dangers remain hidden until you walk right into them. And I was heading straight for one. In the beginning, being Mrs. Matthew Thornton felt like a dream come true. Our honeymoon in Bali was pure paradise. Luxurious villas, unforgettable sunsets, and more champagne than I could ever drink. I was certain I'd finally arrived. Once back home, we settled into a house so beautiful it made my old apartment seem like a storage closet. Each morning began with the rich aroma of coffee from a high-end machine worth more than my first car. Matthew, always impeccably dressed, would kiss me goodbye before heading to the office. It felt as though I was living someone else's life. But, as the saying goes, looks can be deceiving. Almost without me noticing, things began to change. Matthew started spending more weekends out on the golf course. At first, he'd only be gone now and then. Soon, it was every other weekend. Eventually, I was having longer conversations with our housekeeper than with my husband. I tried to fill the emptiness, buried myself in textbooks, joined a book club, even gave gardening a shot. Let's just say plants and I aren't meant to be. But after you've moved the couch for the 10th time, the quiet becomes suffocating. Loneliness seeped in quietly, dense as fog. I'd find myself counting the hours until Matthew came home, only for him to collapse in front of the TV, more interested in sports than in talking to me. Our conversations became rote, like we were reciting lines in a play. How was your day? Good. Yours? Good. Repeat, day in and day out. I felt less like a partner and more like a trophy, displayed on a shelf and gathering dust. The lavish life I thought I'd won began to feel more like a well-upholstered prison. One night, alone in our echoing living room, a glass of wine in hand, I looked at my phone, and it hit me. I was only 27. How had I ended up here, waiting for scraps of attention from my own husband? That restless itch started to grow inside me. I longed for adventure, connection, that rush I used to get whenever Matthew smiled at me. Unbeknownst to me, that craving for something new was about to set off a series of events I never could have predicted. People say the road to ruin is paved with the best of intentions, right? I was about to find out for myself. I was desperate for anything to shake up the routine, so when Matthew announced he'd be leaving for yet another golf weekend, I jumped at the opportunity. 3 days stretched ahead of me, wide open and unplanned. Hungry for some excitement, I called my friend Jenna and begged her for a night out. Let's go all out, I said, feeling like a rebellious teen sneaking out past curfew. We landed at a hip downtown bar, neon lights, overpriced cocktails, music that thumped through your chest. I pulled out a little black dress I hadn't worn since before the wedding. For the first time in ages, I felt attractive, vibrant, alive. That's when I saw him, Derek. He was striking, with messy hair and piercing eyes. He caught me staring, and when he flashed a crooked, knowing smile, my heart skipped a beat. All at once, he appeared beside me, ordering drinks while we strained to hear each other over the relentless thump of the music. I wish I could claim I stayed aloof, exchanged a few polite words, and then dutifully returned home to my husband, the loyal spouse I was expected to be. But the truth is, the blend of vodka sodas and the intoxicating sense of independence went straight to my head. For the first time in a long while, Derek made me feel seen, like I genuinely mattered. We spent the night dancing, swapping jokes, and, without a doubt, engaging in far more flirtation than was prudent. Yet, I managed to rein myself in before anything irretrievable happened, at least on that first evening. The next morning, I awoke with a throbbing headache and a napkin bearing a phone number stashed in my purse. Logic insisted I get rid of it, but instead, I quietly saved the number as D. What followed were weeks of living a double existence. By day, I fulfilled my duties as a faithful wife. After dark, I slipped into another version of myself. Derek and I began with casual coffee meetups, which quickly morphed into lunches and eventually drinks after work. I kept convincing myself our relationship was nothing more than innocent camaraderie. Deep down, though, I couldn't deny the chemistry between us. There was an undeniable charge whenever we were together. He listened as if I were the most fascinating person in the world. Our conversations would flow endlessly, covering my background in psychology, his dreams of writing a novel, our shared passion for obscure indie bands. One night, after a leisurely dinner, we wandered through a park. The sky was painted with the hues of twilight. Derek paused, turned to face me, and softly tucked a stray lock of hair behind my ear. My pulse raced. "Vanessa," he said, his voice low and earnest. "I think I'm falling for you." I knew exactly what I should have done next. I should have stepped back, reminded both him and myself of my marriage, but I didn't. Instead, I leaned in and kissed him. The world seemed to erupt in technicolor behind my eyelids. For the first time in years, I felt completely, thrillingly alive. Later, as I rode home in a taxi, my lips still tingling from his kiss, a storm of guilt and exhilaration churned inside me. I knew I was crossing a line, but I made no effort to turn back. Instead, I only fueled the fire, oblivious to the disaster looming ahead. Picture this. I'm sitting at our dining table, absent-mindedly poking at my salad while Matthew recounted his most recent golf outing. My mind was 1,000 miles away, replaying moments with Derek and the excitement he had sparked in me. Out of nowhere, a wild idea came to me. What if I could have it both ways, maintaining my stable life with Matthew while continuing this electrifying affair with Derek? Without thinking it through, I blurted, "Matthew, how do you feel about open marriages?" The silence that followed was deafening. Matthew dropped his fork, staring at me as if I'd spoken another language. "Excuse me?" he said, struggling to keep his voice steady. I took a deep breath and pushed on. "I've been considering, maybe we could both see other people. It might actually help us." The words landed horribly. Matthew's face went red with a fury I'd never witnessed before. He erupted, raging about trust, vows, and how I could even suggest something like that. I tried to explain, tried to tell him how lonely and invisible I'd felt, but he refused to hear me. The fight dragged on for hours. Plates shattered, doors slammed, and we hurled accusations neither of us could ever take back. In the end, I was left alone, sobbing, as Matthew stormed out. That night, sleep eluded me, my mind replaying every terrible second. By morning, Matthew still hadn't returned. Searching for any distraction, I scrolled through my phone. That's when everything collapsed. Right there, splashed across my social feeds, was a video of Derek and me kissing in the park. It had exploded online overnight. My stomach dropped. Who could have caught us on camera? Mortified, I watched the clip, and the memories came flooding back. One too many drinks, a dare from strangers, a messy, drunken kiss I'd barely recalled through the hangover. My hands shaking, I tried calling Matthew, but he didn't answer. My messages remained unread. As the hours crept by with no word from Matthew, a message arrived from Jenna. "I'm so sorry, V. I never intended for things to get this out of hand." The truth crashed over me. Jenna, my so-called best friend, had been the one to film and post the video. Her betrayal stung even deeper than Matthew's anger. The day continued to unravel. Matthew's belongings had disappeared from our closet. Our joint accounts were empty, the cars gone from the driveway. Just when I thought he had vanished forever, I spotted an envelope on the kitchen counter. My hands trembled as I opened it, dreading what I'd find. "Vanessa, this is what you wanted. You wanted freedom, now you have it. I'm filing for divorce. Please don't contact me or my lawyers. You'll be hearing from them soon. Goodbye, Matthew." The finality of his words blurred before me as tears stung my eyes. In a single afternoon, I had lost not just my husband and confidant, but also the stability of the world I thought I knew. And worst of all, I knew there was no one to blame except myself. I slid down to the kitchen floor, clutching Matthew's letter in my trembling hands, and the weight of my mistake crashed over me. I couldn't see any way to take back what I'd done. The days after he left blurred together, a haze of relentless sobbing, unanswered calls, and growing panic. It was as if I'd been trapped in a nightmare from which I couldn't wake. Each time my phone buzzed, hope surged that it would be Matthew, but it never was. Desperate for comfort, I tried to reach out to Jenna, but she had disappeared completely. The only friend I thought I could rely on had not only broken my trust, but abandoned me when I needed her most. As my emotions spiraled, new, cruel realities set in. At the grocery store, my debit card was declined. Humiliated, I checked my bank account right there in line. My stomach dropped. The account wasn't just low, it was wiped out. My hands shaking, I hurried home and logged into our laptop, checking every account, joint, savings, even the one I'd opened back in university. Each one had been emptied. Matthew had taken it all. Wandering aimlessly through the house, I felt like a stranger in what used to be my home. It wasn't until I noticed the garage that it really hit me. Both cars were gone. The safe in Matthew's office, once filled with our important papers, now sat open and empty. It was as if he was determined to erase every shared memory. Just as I thought the situation couldn't possibly deteriorate further, an email from Matthew's attorney landed in my inbox. The subject line made my blood run cold. Notice of divorce proceedings. I couldn't bear to open it. Desperate, I tried calling Derek for support, but his number had been disconnected. That's when I realized the truth. He must have been as mortified by the viral video as I was. He too had vanished, leaving me alone to pick up the pieces. That night, lying in an empty bed, I stared at the ceiling, replaying every moment. How had my life unraveled so fast? Just a week before, I'd been complaining about the dull routine of marriage. Now, I would have done anything to have that sense of safety back. The next morning, my phone lit up with a flood of notifications. The video had gone viral. Golf tycoon's wife caught in scandalous kiss screamed across the news sites, my face everywhere. The comments ranged from smug satisfaction to pure cruelty. I felt utterly exposed, my pain, a spectacle for everyone. I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to get away but had nowhere to go. With no funds, no transportation, and no friends left to call, I was trapped. Then it hit me. England. The country I'd left years ago, chasing adventure and a better life. With shaking fingers, I dialed my parents' number. It had been months since we last spoke. I'd been too caught up in my own disaster. When my mother answered, I broke down, sobbing as I told her everything. For a moment, there was silence. I braced myself for rejection. But then, my mother's voice, gentle and steady, broke through. "Oh, sweetheart, come home. We'll get through this together." For the first time in days, a small, fragile hope flickered inside me. Maybe, just maybe, I could start again. First, though, I had to face the painful reality of leaving everything behind. As I packed the few belongings I had left, I wondered how it had all spiraled so far beyond my control, and if I would ever be able to make things right. The flight back to England was a blur. I spent the journey fighting back tears, struggling to keep myself composed. When I finally stepped out at Heathrow, exhausted and lost, I saw my parents waiting for me. My mother's face crumpled as she caught sight of me, and she pulled me into a tight hug. I collapsed in her arms, sobbing like a child in the middle of the airport. Back home, everything felt unreal. My old bedroom was just as I'd left it, teen posters on the walls, stuffed animals perched on the bed. It was like stepping into a different era, when my biggest concern was choosing an outfit for the school dance. For days, I barely left the room. I'd wake up, check my phone for a message from Matthew that never came, and drift back into uneasy sleep. My mother would appear with cups of tea, urging me to eat, but I had no appetite. About a week later, my father knocked gently on my door. "Vanessa, love, we need to have a chat," he said softly. I braced myself for anger or disappointment. Instead, he sat next to me on the bed and explained that he and my mother had reached out to a lawyer friend willing to help me through the divorce process, for free. I was stunned. I'd expected judgment, but instead, they offered only support. That's when I finally broke down and confessed everything: the loneliness, the neglect, and the terrible decision I'd made. They listened in silence, never interrupting, simply holding my hands while I let it all out. When I finally ran out of things to say, my mother fixed her gaze on me and said, "You made a huge mistake, honey. But that doesn't define you. You're still our daughter. We love you, and we're not going to let you face this alone." Her reassurance felt like a lifeline thrown to someone lost at sea. For the first time since my world imploded, I felt the faintest spark of hope that I might make it through this. The months that followed were grueling. There was no escaping the consequences. Every day delivered new tabloid headlines, more rumors, and another twist on the story of the golf magnate's betrayed spouse. Matthew had hired a ruthless lawyer, a woman determined to paint me as a scheming, greedy cheater. The press devoured every detail. Still, little by little, with my parents supporting me and weekly sessions with a therapist, I began slowly piecing my life back together. I enrolled in online courses to finally complete my degree in psychology. Volunteering at a nearby women's shelter became my anchor. It gave me a place to put my energy and a way to escape my own turmoil, if only for a while. Out of nowhere, Jenna messaged me. She apologized, blaming that notorious video on her drunken stupidity, insisting she never meant for things to spiral so wildly out of control. Part of me wanted to cut her off for good, to cling to my anger. But I remembered what my therapist had told me. Forgiveness isn't always a gift you give to the other person. It can be what frees you. So I wrote her back. We haven't become best friends again. Maybe we never will. But we've started to repair things, even if it's fragile. As for Derek, he disappeared without explanation. That stung at first. But eventually, I saw it clearly. We weren't truly in love, just two people using each other to avoid our real problems. 6 months after my escape to England, I received an email from Matthew's attorney. The divorce was official. It was an ending, painful but necessary. I got less in the settlement than I'd hoped. Matthew kept most of what we'd created together. But what I took away from it couldn't be counted in dollars. I left with a sense of understanding. One evening, sitting in my parents' backyard with a cup of tea, watching the sun dip behind the trees, it struck me. All the pain I'd gone through, as awful as it was, had forced me to face truths about myself I never would have uncovered if life had stayed easy. I'd made a mess of things, there was no denying that, but I was trying to grow. I was beginning to heal. And more than anything, I was starting to change. I didn't have a clear plan for the future, but I was certain of one thing. I was finished living for other people's expectations. It was finally time to discover what I wanted, who Vanessa really was. As the first stars appeared in the twilight sky, I felt something unfamiliar settle over me, a gentle sense of calm. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the start of a brand new chapter. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you.